Southwest Arena. Jobs was adopted when he was a little kid in the Bay Area. So that sent me on my way into aviation and through United, and then I got a call one day from Herb Kelleher at Southwest Airlines, the chairman and the co-founder, and they had just parted company with Lamar Muse, the first CEO of Southwest. So I went down to Dallas and interviewed with Herb, and I was the head of marketing at United at the time, and United was the largest airline in the world, and Southwest was probably the smallest, with 12 airplanes and 1,000 employees, and they only flew in the state of Texas. But I thought they had the right idea. And so Herb and I visited, and I said, I tell you what, if you all are still willing to change the way the game is played and disrupt the airline industry, then I'm willing to leave United and come down here and give it a shot. And Herb and I shook hands, and the way we went. But those were the three things that I had to do as the second CEO. And I think the same parallels extend to you. What's the vision? We had to have a flight plan, and didn't have one on paper. And people need to understand what your brand is, and when they walk into your courtroom, they need to have great respect for you, and they can read your mind that I'm going to get a fair shot while I'm here, and I don't have to go around, beat around the bush, etc. So what was the vision? So we wrote, it was a day and a half, and we went off and wrote the vision, which was only 52 words long, and that was 30 years ago. And I spent 40% of my time the next year doing what you do every day. You're not only saying you're right or wrong or guilty or not guilty, you're really teaching. You're really teaching. You're setting standards for the population. And I met with Pat Summitt a few years ago. You know, she was the coach, or is the coach at the University of Tennessee, and has just announced the other day that she's got Alzheimer's, which is very sad. But anyway, I said to Pat, when you first started coaching, what was different about it than it is today? And this was about 10 years ago. She said, when I first started coaching, I coached basketball. Now I have to teach values, I have to teach ethics, I'm one of the parents, and finally I get around to teaching basketball. So people need guidance, and that little vision that we wrote, and I spent 40% of my time just pounding it into the fabric of the organization, is still there today. And I wanted that vision to outlast me and the next 2 or 3 CEOs, and it has. And I think the analogy for me is we have a constitution to uphold, and it's outlived a whole bunch of us, and it still seems to be working if we follow. The second thing was we had to figure out what business we were in. And we figured out we weren't an airline. We were in mass transportation. And those of you that have flown Southwest know there is no first class. There is no seat assignments. There is no food. There is no this, no that, no that. They make you stand in line to get on the airplane. There's a whole bunch of little rules. But we figured out if we kept it simple, only had one kind of airplane, flew those airplanes at least 12 and a half hours a day, kept the ground times to a minimum, and then supported it with a culture, with people. You would get off that airplane if the price was right, and it was safe, and you would say, I got my value out of that. I got a fair shake. And that was the premise on which we started. And we just wanted to expand the size of the market and get you out of the automobile, the living room, and get you in the airplane. And still today, it's hard for me to believe, 30 years later, Southwest last year carried 88 million passengers, more than any other airline in the United States of America. Hard to believe. 550 airplanes, but they're still all 737s. Every pilot can fly every airplane. They've stuck to that little vision. My dad always said, if you chase 2 rabbits, you'll never catch either one. Just chase 1 rabbit. And they've chased mass transportation and just stuck with it. Gary Kelly is the 5th CEO, and a great guy, much brighter than I ever was. He was a finance guy. But when we first got acquainted 4 or 5 years ago, I'm not sure how it started, but I sent him an email, and since I was the 2nd CEO, I just signed it number 2. I didn't put Howard down. And when he returned the email, he signed it number 5. So we had a lot of fun with the 2 and the 5, until my wife pointed out to me that Elliot Spitzer, the then governor of New York, who was bailed out, was known as client number 9. She said, you and Gary may want to rethink your 2 and 5. So I sent him an email and told him what she said, and he came back and said, "Oh, good idea." Signed it, Gary. I've never used it since. So then, what business are you all really in? And then how do you support that with the people? And we never trained the folks on how to do those funny songs or sayings, etc. This was the original flight attendant uniform. And when I got there, it was amazing to me how good all the attitudes were. That's the original graduating class 40 years ago. And two of those young ladies, I can't tell you which two. Two are still flying today. And one I get a Christmas card from once in a while, and she always tells me, "I've still got the uniform in the closet that still fits." And that was because of that uniform, as I ended up in a courtroom in Dallas. We only hired female flight attendants in those days. And we knew it couldn't last. This was 1980. So I had gone to the board of directors, and I said, someday, some male is going to walk into the recruiting office on in-flight service, and there's going to be an attorney waiting outside the door, and he's going to say, "I want to be hired as a flight attendant." And I said, the people of Texas have really stood behind us, and I don't know what you all think about it, but I think we really ought to fight it for a while. And the board agreed. Surprised me. So I don't know, 3-4 months go by. Bud Herring called the VP, and he said, "Well, we have a male applicant down here. What do you want me to tell him?" I said, "Tell him if he wants to wear the hot pants, he's hired." The lawsuit was filed the next day. So we took it to court, and the judge, I'm sure some of you have heard of him, was Patrick Higginbotham, who went on to be from Federal District Court in Dallas to go to the Fifth Circuit for many years, and I believe he just went to senior status 2 or 3 years ago. So for 2 days, we argued. Our profitability would absolutely go to pot if we had to hire male flight attendants. And we had charts and graphs, and we had witnesses and all. And Judge Higginbotham sat up there like this for 2 days, covering his mouth. And to keep from laughing, I think, was what he was doing. Anyway, he ruled against us, and we knew we were going to have to do it sometime. So the trial is over. Everybody's gone. Kelleher and I are standing out in the lobby, talking, just the two of us. And here came Judge Higginbotham. And he looked around to be sure there was nobody else around, and came over and said, "Guys, I sure hated to have to rule against you, because I sure like flying on Southwest Airlines too." You got to remember, this is 1980, and the times have changed. I always admired him for his humor. So that's how they hired, and they came because of the uniform. And they had all been cheerleaders, drum majorettes, baton twirlers, stuff like that in high school or college. And they knew they were going to look in that uniform when they came to apply for the job. They were in show business. So we interviewed a lot of them, the people department did, and that was the personality profile that they came up with, and they still use it today. And that's how Southwest Airlines differentiates itself across the spectrum. And they hire all of the employees with those same ingredients. And Gary Kelly told me he was hired that way in 1985, and he came aboard as well. So the vision, the business are you in, and then the culture and the people. I made a list for a young man on an airplane about 3 months ago of what I thought the attributes of a great leader were. And I think it applies to great judges as well. Probably goes across the spectrum in any industry. But the honesty and the integrity, I think that's the foothold, the foundation for all of us. I learned that on the farm, the accountability, the responsibility. You got to build trust. You got to have the passion, the vision, authenticity. I see that so often in the speaking industry of those that are, I saw it yesterday with General Powell and Rudy Giuliani. They're the same off stage as they are on stage, 24/7. Team spirit, the communication, self-confidence, self-starters, sense of humor. It's not rocket science, but companies that are sustainable for the long term seem to have those ingredients in the great leadership. I just want to close with a couple of funny slides, and then if you still have time, Bill, we can take a few questions. But I think when you're sitting on that bench, perception can become reality. People perceive who you are and what you are sometimes before you have a chance to act what you really are. But perception can become reality. This one, as you can see, there's something wrong with that sign. There's no 708. And the problem with that was it was my room. And that's at the Vintage Plaza Hotel in Portland, Oregon. And that was 1995. And I got off the elevator and went to the bellman, and I said, wait a minute, there's no 708. He took me around the corner, and there's 708. And he went back and looked at that sign, and he said, I've been here 5 years. Never noticed that before. I'm thinking, who's paying attention to the small stuff around here? We're all taught in business schools and all, or law school, somebody's got to have the 30,000-foot view and to see the big picture. But my experience has always been, you got to look at the little stuff, too, because sometimes it's those little things that really do make the difference. So I would tell this story over the years, and people would come up from Portland and say, I'm going to go get that sign fixed. I say, good. If you do that, then I'll stop talking about it. Would never hear another word. So 5 years went by, and Krista and I are in Portland. We're going up the Columbia River on a paddle boat cruise. I said, let's go via downtown real quick in the cab. And she said, you're not going to go check that sign. So the cab waited outside. We took the camera. We ran up to the 7th floor. Same sign. It took them another 5 years after that to ever get the sign. So perception can become reality. And finally, you all are going to be faced with, as you've already found out, a terrific struggle with your work and your family life balance. And I struggled with that many years myself. But fortunately, with Krista, my wife, and our kids, we've had a great relationship together. My wife was a flight attendant. Our son's a captain. He married a flight attendant. Our daughter, Sue, was the director of public relations here in Reno a few years ago for an airline called Reno Air. So we have a lot in common. And we always talked about work at the table, at the dinner table. People say, oh, leave your work at home. No, I brought my work home. I thought they always ought to be involved. And the checkbook laid on the table. Kids could see how little money we had. We didn't hold back anything. And I think balance is going to be really important for all of you. I'm sure you've already figured it out. But you got to do some things to get out of your comfort zone once in a while. And I just thought of one time when I was out at the air races, an airplane will fly with 2 blades, 3, 4 blades, if that's the way it's designed. But if one blade gets out of balance, something bad's going to happen. And the same thing can happen to you and me. So I just drew my own propeller, which I still have it hanging up in my home office over here in Sparks. And mine happens to say family, work, community, church, and person. Yours might say something else or have fewer blades. But it's just a reminder to me every day when I go in that office that I'm here in town. Think about the work-life balance. And think of the people that are going to be coming before you and the stress that they're feeling as well. They've got some difficulties in the same area. So we've just tried to do some funny stuff over the years. And that was my Christmas present a few years ago to go drive NASCAR with Sun Mike in Charlotte. And then 2 years ago, USA Today dared me to make another skydive. So we went back to Ohio and I booked on to David Hart, who's an Army Ranger who's made 4,000 jumps. And daughter Sue went along with me, and she jumped as well. So it's just things to keep the family together. Get out of your comfort zone. See where your freak-out point is. And then I saw that bumper sticker once. Are you really the person your dog thinks you are? That's probably the biggest challenge that all of us have. That little dog on the right is Lady Tallulah. And that was on my Christmas card last year from a Southwest Airlines flight attendant. And she had taken Lady Tallulah to the Galleria, and she got so tired she had to strap her in the car. So, are you really the person you think you are? I think I admire what you all are doing. I think what you're doing here this 2 weeks will be a lasting memory for all of you. I appreciate what you do for the United States of America, and thank you, and God bless America.